simultanis, però ara, si ens permeteu, us farem un brevíssim resum, una brevíssima conclusió del que han estat aquests 2 dies de treball compartit. Justina, Tomàs, Hali, si em voleu acompanyar a la taula i de seguida acabarem. Dos minuts, cronòmetre. A veure, la sessió d'aquesta tarda ens l'ha resumit fantàsticament la Ishtar. Voluntat de conservar les nostres llengües i voluntat de conèixer-nos més entre tots per poder garantir no només aquesta diversitat lingüística, sinó aquesta diversitat de mirades. Les taules del matí ens han permès també veure diferents opcions, diferents maneres de garantir, d'una banda, el coneixement de la llengua catalana i de l'altra, la coordinació entre diferents organitzacions per poder afavorir un procés o revertir un procés de minorització que està patint el català en un moment en què ens pensàvem que ja teníem totes les estructures i infraestructures necessàries per funcionar com una llengua normal. Hem pogut veure que no és així, però que hi ha prou interès i prou voluntat per poder continuar treballant. I sobretot m'agradaria destacar el vincle amb la sessió d'ahir, que ara us faran 5 cèntims, i aquesta sessió, sobretot d'aquesta tarda, que ens ha permès veure com les presentacions que se'ns van fer ahir de diferents realitats a diferents continents es reprodueixen també, potser de manera una mica diferent, però a través de les diàspores. I per això és tan important aquesta connexió entre les comunitats en els seus llocs d'origen i també en els seus llocs de destí per múltiples raons. Passo la paraula primer al Tomàs, que va ser el que va moderar la taula d'experiències de diferents països.
Thank you, Mònica. So, as you remember, I moderated the panel on community engagement and language activism. The presentations we heard from the Mapuche context, the Colombian Amazon, the NASA Plan de Vida, the Torwali experience, the critical intervention of Eddie Avila, and the Esquiat framework articulated by Chutska, as well as the presentation by Jose Antonio and Josep. They together formed not just a collection of case studies, but a remarkably coherent rethinking of language revitalization as a field. So what becomes evident across these contributions, I think, is that we are witnessing a shift away from a paradigm centered on languages as objects to be saved, toward one that understands language as a process of living, relating, and world-making. Allow me to briefly conclude with a synthesis that reflects the depth of what we have learned from that panel. Languages do not disappear simply because they are no longer spoken. They disappear when the relationships that sustain them are broken. And they live when those relationships endure between generations, between people and territory, between knowledge systems and everyday practice. That panel showed us that the language activism is not about saving languages as isolated systems. It's about sustaining worlds of meaning, belonging, and life. Our role, then, is not to design solutions from outside at any pace, but to support communities in continuing what they already know how to do, to live their languages.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Vale.
Buena tarde, muchas gracias. In the afternoon, we carried on this discussion discussing the potential of researchers and research in support of these projects and processes, and in support of minoritized languages and communities. And we had panelists from different contexts around the world, as well as different disciplines and different positionalities. So some are working from linguistics, some are working from education, some from cultural studies or anthropology. And we note both potentials and a lot of challenges in building long-term partnerships and collaborations where the goals and the expertise of community members and activists are centered, not just the goals of researchers and the academy. And in order to do this, we discussed the importance of being aware of the colonial history of research institutions and the potential neo-coloniality of these institutions and of our practices as researchers. We discussed the need to problematize the traditional paradigm that separates researchers from so-called communities and puts a boundary between them. We know that some members of minoritized communities are also researchers. All are experts and holders of knowledge. And we know that researchers are social actors whose actions and discourses have social and political consequences that we need to be aware of. The panelists discussed that and emphasized the importance of time and building relationships with openness and with reflexivity, whether one is an outsider to a community or an insider. This critical reflexivity remains crucial in building alliances. Panelists also reflected on the fact that the outputs and impacts that universities expect may not align with what emerges from collaborative knowledge building, and thus it's important for us to be creative and to find ways of using university resources that support community goals, and for us to not allow the structures and logics of the university to dictate how we create knowledge together. So in conclusion, we hope that some of the institutions that have historically excluded and discriminated minoritized language speakers and communities can contribute to a more diverse and inclusive future. There's no simple or easy way to do this, but we hope that we can learn from and support each other in this process. Gracias.
So finally, it's me. So I have to admit that I feel overwhelmed, and at the same time, like overwhelmed in the positive sense, and profoundly inspired by the linguistic cultural abundance of this meeting, and also epistemological abundance. It's so profoundly inspiring, and what's really important for me in the context of this meeting, that I could see this overlapping, interlocking, and complementary levels of practices at very different, but also complementary levels of linguistic diversity, and how the practice really permeates everything that we do and what we should do in the academy and beyond the academy, and all possible sorts of connections between the different stakeholders and different traditions of research and practice. And I think probably one of the most inspiring achievements, I would say, of this meeting is that how we managed together to bridge this gap between the gap that I think still exists at the level of research and policy and education and all sorts of practice between the so-called minoritized languages, indigenous languages, and migrants languages. So this is something that the participants of this meeting, the contributors to this meeting, also the public who participated in this, has been able to really bridge and show these distinctions are often like superficial and imposed top-down classifications or policy-level classifications that really are irrelevant to our work. Because we really need to bridge these categorizations in the pursuit of linguistic diversity and well-being that's associated with linguistic diversity, and all this well-being it brings to our world, and all these possible benefits. And I'm also very impacted by the participation I've seen in this meeting, because the problem of our gatherings, especially in the academy, but sometimes also at community levels, is that we are confined to those who present, who are invited as presenters. And what has been possible here is this really vibrant presence of different kinds of participants, not only participants who are invited to speak, but those who are invited to speak as part of the public. And this is really amazing to see this for these 3 days, this level of participation. So I'm so profoundly grateful to Monica and other Katyusha, Maite, and other persons in the key actors in Linguapax and other Catalan partners in this enterprise to have achieved this, because this is really something unique. This level of participation and engagement. So I'm really profoundly grateful. Thank you so much for this experience, really unusual experience.
Moltes gràcies, efectivament, a tots vosaltres. Sense vosaltres això no hauria estat possible, i esperem haver assolit algun dels objectius que ens plantejàvem, com indica el títol, d'abordar aquest repte global posant l'empoderament de les comunitats al davant, és a dir, són elles que mantindran la llengua i que la continuaran transmetent a les properes generacions, i sobretot aquest aspecte que hem volgut reflectir en tots els panells que hem anat desenvolupant, com podem col·laborar entre nosaltres, com establir connexions i buscar objectius comuns i treballar-los conjuntament ens pot ajudar a tots en els nostres objectius individuals, però sobretot col·lectius. Moltíssimes gràcies per la vostra assistència